Hi, I'm Ken. This is a grade 1 GCSE maths worksheet I made. I'm just going to be going through the answers. If you'd like to have a go at this worksheet, it's available on my website. I'll put the link below. There's more versions of this worksheet if you'd like to have a go at them. And there's also some other grade 1 worksheets I made just by taking the first few pages from the start of GCSE papers. All the links I'll put below. So this is just me going through this worksheet I made. This is worksheet 1 of 8. And basically, it's just meant to be those sort of grade 1 questions where at the beginning of an exam where you don't need to do anything other than just write an answer. So things like this. What's this shape? Well, it's a cone. Okay, so we need to know our 3D shapes. And then question 2, what's the probability of a coin landing on heads? Well, if it's a fair coin, it's going to land on heads half the time and tails half the time. So I put a cross in the middle at half. Okay. Question 3, we got some fractions to order from smallest to largest. Now, what you might notice is they're all quarters, from 1/4 up to 3/4. So because they've all got the same denominator, they've all got a 4 on the bottom, we can just order them in terms of the numerators. So 1, 2, 3. So nice and simple there. We didn't have to change any of them. Something like this, 100 take away 37. Obviously, we could use the column method and borrow, but what we should really be thinking is, particularly in your head, what do you add on to 37 to get to 100? Well, if we add on 3, we get to 40, and then on to 40, you add on 60. So 63 would be the answer there. Potentially a 2 marker, really. I just made these up. They're generally meant to be 1 mark, grade 1 questions. Some of them might feel a little bit trickier than they should be, but generally we're sort of looking at the right kind of level here. 5 times 12, well, you're expected to know your times tables up to 12. Hopefully we all know that 5 times 10 is 50. 55, 60 to get to 12 fives. 72.5 divided by 10 for question 6. Well, dividing by 10, again, we shouldn't really be doing any work here. We should just know what happens when we divide by 10. What happens is every number moves down a column, it becomes worth 10 less. So the 7 that was in the tens column goes into the units column, the 2 moves down and the 5 moves down. So 7.25 for that one. The mode of these numbers, so the mode is one of the methods for finding an average. It's one of the simplest ways of finding an average. It's just whichever number came up the most. And I think just looking at this list, we can see quite clearly that 4 is the number that came up the most. So that's the mode. Question 8 here, change 8 kilometers into meters. Well, what we need to know is that kilo means 1,000. So a kilometer means 1,000 meters. So 8 kilometers means 8,000 meters. If you're on social media, you'll see things like this, 6.3K likes. The K, I think everyone knows when they see it on social media, means 1,000. So kilogram, stuff like that, we should be thinking 1,000. Whereas if it's like cent, that's 100, okay? So knowing that there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer, really important, really useful. Question 9, we're being asked to factorize this. So knowing that factorize means we're putting it back into brackets. So our answer, we're going to take something out as a factor. It's only going to be a number because x is only part of the 6x. There's no x over here. So we're looking for the biggest number that goes into 6 and 24. Hopefully you'll spot that it's 6. And then we need to leave in the brackets x plus 4. It's much harder than expanding to factorize. So what you can always do at the end is check by expanding. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 4 gives us that 24. So you can check whether you did it right or wrong by expanding it at the end. This is a really nice skill to get the hang of. Most of the questions in this kind of worksheet, you should just learn how to do. There shouldn't be any confusion over what it wants you to do. Once you've done enough of them, you'll just know, I've done a lot of these. I just need to remember how to do them. And that's how you'll get through the early part of the exam. This looks tricky. All the prime numbers between 20 and 32. So this definitely is a bit harder than you'd expect for 1 mark. A prime number, let's write them all out, 23, 29, 31. So those are the 3 prime numbers between 20 and 32. The reason they're prime is they only have 2 factors. The only numbers that go into any of them are 1 and themselves. That's what makes them prime. So probably a bit harder than a 1-mark question there. Find 10% of 90. Again, this should be something we're really comfortable with. To find 10% of something, you divide by 10. A nice number like 90, which ends in a 0, we can just get rid of the 0. But what's really happening is each number's moving down a column, a bit like when we divided by 10 earlier. Really simple. When it ends in a 0, though, you can just get rid of the 0 and put 9. Okay, so question 12, reflecting the shape in the mirror line. There's a few ways of doing it. One way of doing it is just think about that red dot I created is 1 square away from our mirror line. That's our mirror line right down there. So the other, when we reflect it, it's going to go to the other side, and it should be the same distance away. Likewise, this point is going to end up here. This point is going to end up here. And hopefully you can sort of begin to see how the shape's going to go. If you're not sure, again, that yellow point is 1, 2, 3 away. So count 1, 2, 3 the other side and put it there. This should just look like this. So that is that shape reflected in the mirror line. Moving on to question 13. So we found 10% a minute ago. Here we're going to find 25%. So knowing that 25% is a quarter, it's the same thing as a quarter, and knowing that to find a quarter of something, you divide it by 4. These are nice skills to have. So knowing that what we should be doing here is 80 divided by 4. Whenever you're doing something like this, you're looking to see whether the 4 goes into the 8. If it does, which it does, we say, right, 4 goes into 8 twice, and then we just plot that 0 back on the end. So 80 divided by 4 is 20. That is 25% of 80. Moving on to question 14. This is a substitution question. Work out the value of P when Q equals 5. Well, P is equal to 3 times whatever Q is. And instead of writing Q, I'm going to put 5 because we're told Q is 5. So 3 times 5, 15. Add 4, 19. We have to multiply first there. To be honest, we would do that anyway because we're reading left to right. But there are questions like based on BidMaths where you have to think about the order you do it in. So we would always multiply there before we add. So that's what we get when we substitute in there. Much simpler here, rounding 8,392 to the nearest 1,000. So the choices here are, do we round down to 8,000 or do we round up to 9,000? Which is it closer to? Well, because we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, it's the hundreds column that's going to decide, and there's a 3 in that column. Because there's a 3 there, the rules of rounding are 4 or below, we go down. So we're going to stay at 8,000. It's much closer to 8,000 than it is to 9,000. We've got a subtraction here. 14.6 take away 5.3. So we're doing this with decimals, so it is a bit trickier than it could be. 6 take away 3 is nice. We can just take the 3 off the 6. We're going to need to borrow for the next bit because 4 is smaller than 5. Or you could just think of it as 14 take away 5 at this point. Let's just borrow though. So bring that 1 down. 14 take away 5 is 9. So 9.3 for that. Another factorize here, a bit trickier. This time we can take out a number and a letter. So 5 goes into 10 and into 15, and we can also take y out from the y squared and the 15y. Put that there, and we would need to leave 2y, take away 3 here. Question 18 now, we're being asked to expand a bracket. Just going to rewrite it down here to show you how I do it. So when we're doing something like this, you're multiplying everything in the bracket by what's on the outside. So we're going to do 5 times x, which is 5x. And then we're also going to do 5 times 3, which is 15. We're going to keep the plus. There's a plus in the middle. That will always stay the same unless you're timesing by a negative number, which can happen. But in this case, we're just timesing by positive 5. So the symbol in the middle stays the same. Another rounding question here to the nearest whole number. So with 8.7, the choices are 8 or 9. The number that's going to decide this is immediately after where we're rounding. So it's the 7 that's going to decide. Because it's a 7, the rules are we round up to a 9. 5 or more in that place, we round up. So 8.7 is closer to 9 than to 8. Here is a grid. What fraction of the grid is shaded? Well, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. Out of total of, well, there's another 6 here, 12, 18, plus another 3 out of 21. You don't need to simplify it in this case. It's only a 1-mark question. If you do want to simplify it, 3 goes into all of those, 2 out of 7. And you can see that 3 goes in because if we look back at the shape, it's got 3 rows. So in its simplest, 2 out of the 7 are shaded. 2 out of the 7 in that top row are shaded. So that's the same for each row. So it's a good example of how simplifying fractions works. Question 21, converting a decimal to a percentage. 0.72 is 72%. When I have students that struggle with this, they're normally pretty happy that 0.5, they know a half is 50%. Basically, the first 2 digits after the decimal point will give you the percentage. We times the decimal by 100 to convert it to a percentage, or you can just learn it's those 2 digits there. So if we had something like 0.03, 03, it's 3%. We could put the 0 if we want to, but it's just 3%. Question 22, we're just going to simplify this. When we're multiplying a number by itself, and remember C does stand for a number, we just don't know what it is. What we do is we use powers. So we're just going to put 1C to the power of 4 because there are 4 C's that are being multiplied. So it's as simple as that. Change 1.2 kilograms into grams. Well, we had this earlier with kilometers. So this time, 1,000 grams is what a kilogram means. So 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. 1.2 kilograms, well, the 2 is just going to stay right after the 1. So it's 1,200 grams. Question 24 here. How many sides does a pentagon have? Well, penta means 5. It's a 5-sided shape. You're expected to know up to a decagon, a 10-sided shape, the name of all the polygons. So worth knowing. Question 25, we're going to simplify this. So 4D plus 6D is 10D. And then we still got to take away 3D. 10 take away 3 is 7. 10D take away 3D, 7D. And the nice simple one here, 32 add 7. Should hopefully just be able to do it. The 2 and the 7 add to make 9. So 39. Square for question 27. So here's the thing. Most of these questions are worded. If it's talking about a shape and it's only words, draw it. So we got a square. Side length of 6. So each side is 6. What is its perimeter? Well, the perimeter is all the sides added together. So those 4 6s added together to give us 24 centimeters. So that square would have a perimeter of 24 centimeters. Not to be confused with the area. That's a different thing and a different method. The perimeter of any shape is just all the sides added together. So it's always as simple as that. Now, you might not know all the sides, but for the perimeter of any shape, you're adding together all the sides. Question 28 here. We're after a multiple of 7. So multiples of 7 are the 7 times table. Not to be confused with factors. Factors are numbers that go into 7. Only 2 numbers go into 7 because it's prime. But there's an infinite amount of multiples of 7. Which one's between 20 and 30? Well, just 28. Sometimes there's more than one choice. In this case, oh no, there is more than one choice, 21 as well. So you'd have a choice of either 21 or 28. Okay, either one of those is fine. Question 29. We've got a simple equation here, although a lot of people do struggle with it. What this means is an unknown number divided by 4, which equals 9. Well, if we don't divide that number by 4, it must be 4 times bigger. So the number we're after is whatever 9 times 4 is, and that is 36. So that's our answer to that. Question 30, we've got 4 fractions, and we're asked which one is not equivalent to a third. So it means which one isn't going to simplify to a third. And the one that isn't going to simplify is 4/10, because in its simplest form, so to simplify it, we're looking for numbers that go into both 4 and 10. Only 2 goes into them. When it's simplified fully, we get 2/5. All the other ones will simplify to a third. So 5/15. The common factor of 5 and 15 is 5. Divide them both by 5 and you do get a third. 4/10, we don't. Question 31 here, what's the next number in this sequence? So with sequences, what we're always looking at is what's it going up in. This is quite a simple sequence. It's simply going up in 2 each time. So to find the next number, we're just going to add on 2, 8 add 2, 10. So that's the next number in the sequence there. Another little simple linear equation here, a one-step equation. If 6x equals 42, what we're being asked to do here is just to figure out what x is, what 1x is. To find one of something, because we've got 6 of them, we divide by 6. If things are directly proportional, you can do that. And it's called the unitary method to find one of something. It's really important. It'll get you lots of marks in the exam being good at this. So we're going to divide 42 by 6, and knowing that it's 7 is maybe the trickiest bit there, knowing your times tables. Moving on to the last few questions here. There's 37 questions on this paper. Write 19% as a fraction. What we need to be aware of is percentages are fractions. What they mean is percent per 100. They're always out of 100. So 19% is 19 out of 100. It could potentially simplify down to a simpler fraction and not have the 19 in it anymore. But in this case, it doesn't simplify. It just stays 19 out of 100. What I mean by that, I don't think I was very clear. 20% means 20 out of 100. But that will simplify down to a fifth because you can divide both 20 and 100 by 20. And then at this point, this is where a lot of the confusion comes from with fractions and percentages. Where's the 20 gone? It's the simplifying the 20% down to a fifth that confuses people, because all of a sudden there's a 1 and a 5 there. But it's because percentages are fractions and you can often simplify fractions. Got another rounding one here. So 5.6734 to 2 decimal places. So what that means is there's going to be 2 numbers after the decimal point. This is the decimal point there. So we're going to cut off after the 7. So our choices are that it remains 5.67, or we make the last digit one bigger, 5.68. So those are the choices, and the number that's going to decide is the 3. The rules of rounding are, because that number is 4 or less, it's 3. We don't round up, so we're going to stay at 5.67. So that's it to 2 decimal places. Write down a 6-digit number that has a 4 as its 10,000s digit. So 6-digit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have units, tens, hundreds, thousands, and the next column is our 10,000s column. So we need to have a 4 there. And what it means by only putting it once, it's just so you can't just put 4s everywhere, because technically you'd be right if you did that. You're not allowed to do that. So the 4 is only allowed to appear in the 10,000s column. So we can put whatever number else we want. You can put whatever you want there, but it's the 4 that needs to be in that column. And then round 347 to the nearest 12. Well, that should be 10. Doesn't make sense to round to the nearest 12. I'm going to go back and change that on the actual worksheet. So to the nearest 10, the tens column is the one the 4 is in. So we're either going to 340 or 350. It's the 7 that's going to decide for us. The 7 means we round up. because it is bigger than 5. 5 or bigger, we round up. It's only 3 away from 350. It's 7 away from 340. So we're going to round it up there. And then last of all, write the following numbers in order of size, starting with the smallest number. So I'm also going to adjust this question because I don't like how well spaced out these are. So if you do want to have a go at this worksheet, which you maybe don't if you got all the way to the end, I'm going to adjust some of those last 2 questions so it will look slightly different. Most of these numbers have 2 decimal places, so I'm going to make them all have 2 decimal places. You're allowed to do that. You can just add extra zeros in. What this does, it makes it a little bit easier to look at now because our brain will start seeing 2-digit numbers. And then hopefully it becomes clear that 0.08 is the smallest. I'm just going to circle as I go. 0.17, 0.25, 0.4 next, and then 1 or 1.0. So those are the answers to those questions. So I will adjust a couple of those. If you like the worksheet, there are more just like this on my website. So do have a go. Any mistakes, any questions, just let me know. It's always possible there's a few mistakes in this video or on the worksheets. Just let me know. Hope that was useful. Thank you.